Yes, my name is Lincoln Frasca, and I'm joined today by Jens Hilke. We are going to be talking about becoming an environmental leader in your town. We're very excited. This is a brand new webinar, some new content. So thanks for showing up, and we'll love to hear how you all receive it at the end. A couple housekeeping items. If you're not already comfortable with Microsoft Teams, you'll see a video and a mic option at the top of your screen. And you can please keep your mics muted while we're presenting. There'll be a chance to unmute and talk at the end of our presentation here. We'll go for an hour. Or the presentation will probably be more like 45 minutes. We'll leave some time at that end. And then if you want to keep your videos on and off, that's fine. If you're having bandwidth issues, you can shut the video off and it will help the overall bandwidth of the presentation. Hopefully you have access to a chat box. And if you do, test it out and just put your name and your town, maybe your commission that you're on, into that chat. Enter, send that message to the group. And as we're going along, you can put your comments in or questions, and then Jens and I will stop periodically, have some breaks in the presentation. We'll look to the chat to answer those questions, again, saving the live questions to the end. And then we're also going to share resources and links with you all through this chat throughout the presentation. Okay, so what's on the agenda? We'll talk about what it looks like to be a town leader on that individual personal level. Then we will move into sort of functional groups and how the individual leader plays into the larger group cohesion and the group process. And then I'm going to hand it over to Jens, and he will take it into the community scale and talk about some collaborative conservation efforts statewide and what it means to really work with the whole community. So we are the Fish and Wildlife Department, and our mission here is the conservation of fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the people of Vermont. It is a broad, multi-scaled vision, and we really work with all Vermonters, from that single landowner or recreation user to the entire town, and we work with whole communities, and we're planning for not just folks that are Vermonters today, but the future generations and people who are, coming to our state or being born into it. However you get here, we're here to work with you. As the Community Wildlife Program, Jens and I together make up this department, and we really focus on helping conservation and planning commissions achieve their goals and integrate conservation science into town planning. So that takes us into all different directions, all different towns, many night meetings. We're working tonight with Chittenden County's Regional Planning Commission and the conservation commissions across Chittenden County. So we do a lot to bring communities together and towns across boundaries. And we are available free of charge for your services. So please do reach out if you have the need or are looking into possibly some of the stuff we mentioned here today. All right, so without further ado, what does make a town leader? Well, if you're on a commission or a select board, city council, whatever it is, then you know that holding a leadership role in any town really means that there's additional meetings, there's more work, and these are usually night meetings. And for a lot of us, they come after a full work day. And in order to be a town leader, we have to show up for those things and sort of abide by this municipal etiquette that we need to be following through with constantly. So I'll just start off by quoting the famous Woody Allen, that 80% of success in life is just showing up. I'll go another step further and say the next 20% is showing up on time. So for all you who came on time to this webinar or early, we applaud you. But just that simple step of being where you need to be, whether it's a monthly meeting or more or less frequently, on time and ending on time, gets you respect from your other commissioners as well as the public. So along with this is preparing and posting your agenda, any materials that you'll be discussing publicly. It's good to get those things out ahead of time. Unfortunately, I've seen more than one meeting postponed because either the commissioner or maybe the folks working, in the city department didn't warn the meeting 24 hours ahead of time, and we had to, cancel the meeting on short notice. So avoid that from happening. Let people know where you're going to be, get there on time, end on time, and when you are there, make sure that you're there, you're present. Okay, it's easy when we're doing hybrid meetings to have three tabs going at once. People have multiple cell phones these days, so when you show up for the 2 hours each month, make sure you're there and you're listening to what other people are saying on your commission in the public, and you're checking for understanding. Whoever's taking the minute notes needs to be taking thorough notes and posting those, for public review after the fact. And this also means, as you strive, to be a leader, you want to be reflecting back onto your commission and being an active member in the conversation, reflecting back onto them what you think you're hearing and what direction you think the conversation is going in. So the last thing here is creating these pathways forward. So oftentimes, especially with hot topics, arguments or discussions can become circular, and people are starting to say the same things, or the argument, it's just you're not getting anywhere. So somebody needs to be looking for the next step. Is it time to vote? Do we need to do more research or create a study group or a pilot study? Do we have to just put this on pause completely until next meeting or two meetings from now? But if you only do have a couple hours each month, then there needs to be a leader in the group who is moving things along and making sure each one of those agenda items gets covered. Okay, so part of being a leader is facilitation. Okay, part of good leadership. And facilitation is really about making something possible or making it easier. It's very different than doing something all by yourself. If anyone here has had the great opportunity of completing a group project alone, then you know that this often leads to people assuming you have the ultimate time and superhero capacity to carry the extra work weight. And it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for the individual, and it's really not sustainable for the group, or the public that you're serving. So a facilitative leader needs to know how to delegate first and foremost. Delegation is a major responsibility of any leader, and the goal here is to give people jobs that they're excited about and that they have the capacity and the skills to see through. So you can't just know how to delegate, you have to also be able to take your fair share of the pie here and model participation. You want to be the change within your commission that you want to see, and this takes demonstrating that you can complete your tasks on time and professionally, and you're living up to the word and the work that you said you would do, and when you would have it done by. When we're talking about delegation, it's more than just you know telling who to do what, but how you delegate is as important as who and what you're delegating. And this gets us into leadership styles, because there's many different ways to delegate and communicate the division of labor when it comes to working in municipal government. But there's styles that we each have, and that everybody in our group assumes naturally, and it's good to be aware of those, and we're going to talk about those now. So I'm going to outline four major leadership styles that were identified by the National Outdoor Leadership School, or NOLS. The first style I'll talk about are analyst and architects. And these leaders, they're the folks, they're the thinkers. They emphasize meaning and concepts, and they're looking for more information and more opinions, and maybe slower to process, but they want to have all the information and facts in front of them before they weigh in on an issue. Then we have relationship masters, and these are the people that really emphasize caring in the group, and they're really good at building and sustaining community. And their decisions might be more based on where other people lie on a certain issue and maintaining those relationships and not burning any bridges. Then we have these spontaneous motivators, and these folks really emphasize emotion in their delivery, and they often voice their ideas and supply a lot of passion, and they can energize a group and move groups to action to do really great things. So they bring a lot of enthusiasm and energy to the table. And then lastly, we have a driver. And a driver is somebody who, maybe unlike the analyst architect, the drivers are looking for that action. They're looking to, make a move. And these are the people who are the givers of information and opinions. They will freely tell you where they stand on any issue. And each one of these leadership styles has its place, and it offers advantages and potential drawbacks in specific situations. So understanding your style and being comfortable to move and shift between these styles, given the situation at hand, is a valuable and challenging learned skill that we have to practice. It doesn't just come naturally to a lot of us. And as you take on projects as a town, you want to look to build a team that's going to represent multiple leadership styles, because not one of these styles is going to work for everybody all the time. And Jens, if you will, there's an activity about leadership evaluation that we want to drop in the chat that this Knowles School developed, and we encourage you to look at that activity. And it uses this XY axis here, and you and your commission can identify what type of leaders you are and talk more about those characteristics and how you all work together. Okay, so maybe as important as which style you choose here is going to be the maturity of your style. Um, and I'll just share a personal story here. For several years, I worked with Outward Bound, California, which is similar to the Knowles School, and I was an instructor out there in the Sierra Mountains. When I first started working there, we had this big week-long training for all the new instructors, and we had been out for 10 days at this point, and we were trying to get back out of the woods, and we sort of had this final challenge to navigate off trail back to our van. There happened to be a snowstorm this day, and I was the navigator for the day. And I do self-identify most of the time as a spontaneous motivator, and at that time my map reading skills were still developing, but I had a lot of enthusiasm. And whenever we didn't really know what direction to go, I would just sort of choose a direction and send the group there in a very convincing, enthusiastic, inspiring manner. So, needless to say, this method of faking it until I make it didn't really pan out. We ended up 7 miles from where we wanted to be, deep in the valley, and the instructors had to point the trail out to us. So we eventually got back. No harm was done. But looking back on that now, um, if I was be able to be a little bit more aware of my own tendencies and and areas of growth and limitations, I could recognize that maybe it's the time to maybe slow down on the spontaneity side of things, and maybe try to help motivate the group into some more problem solving. Maybe enlist an architect analyst in the group to help me with the map reading, and do it as a group instead of trying to just carry the whole group on my back and hope things work out. And I encourage you all to try different styles, different leadership styles in different settings. See what kind of leader you are at home, with your commission, at work, and just building an awareness is the first step here. Okay, so once we have a leadership style chosen, and we've got the right one for the situation, and it's mature, then we're able to do great things. Really, we can start thinking about sharing our vision and moving people to action. Motivating others really looks like bringing the best out of people and your team. And it could be, the spontaneous motivator coming up with a great idea or a new way to do some public outreach engagement or hold a celebratory event in your town. But you also need to be holding the big picture and showing people the small steps that need to be achieved along the way. And a lot of, an important role of the chair in a commission, which we'll talk about here shortly, is outlining the process to achieve a bigger goal. Say rewriting a whole town plan. The public needs to see the small steps going into that plan. but you need to hold that big picture. And celebration is this isn't just a maybe if we have time. You need to recognize the small achievements and the hard work that people are doing throughout the process, and the partnerships that you're building in town, and the user groups of the places you're planning for. They want to be recognized, and they want to celebrate their place. So you need to figure out what makes sense and what that looks like in your town, and really have fun with it. So when it comes to leadership, I'll share a nice quote by a mountaineer, John Graham, who called it the capacity to move others toward goals shared with you with a focus and competency they would not achieve on their own. So the sum is greater than the parts is what we're getting at here. I'm sorry, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, if you will. But you really are trying to work within a group to make something happen that you wouldn't be able to do by yourself. Okay, so we looked at the individual, and now it's time to talk about the group and what makes a functional group. So the first thing a functional group needs is what we already talked about. It's a facilitative leader, and they need to be able to choose that right style for the right situation and the right group. And it doesn't have to just be one person, preferably not, but there needs to be people who know how to use those skills and styles that we just went over for the whole group to be successful. We also need diversity. We need diversity in people and opinions inside of your group, and diversity in those leadership styles. And we also need diverse stakeholders to be at the table during the planning process. So you need to spend the time to get people from all sides of the issue and all parts of town in the room together, or in the Zoom together. But you also need to then have a process in place to handle the diversity and differing opinions that are going to come up, because conflict is a natural part of the planning process, and we don't want to shy away from that, but we want to have a mature, public, fair process to hear everybody's ideas and then start moving towards a shared vision. And this is what keeps the group motivated. And it is the common ground that sort of holds everybody together. It could look like a mission statement for your conservation commission, or a place that everybody in your town loves, or a business that everybody cherishes, or a general store or something like that. Um, and you want to identify what your shared vision or common ground is, what you're working towards, or why you're working for something, and remind each other of that along the way as challenges occur, because they will occur. And it's not just challenges that come up, but there are many different phases of group development. No matter how functional and mature and practiced your group is, if you choose to stay together, then you're going to experience some of these phases. And there are sort of 5 distinct phases we're going to talk about the next couple of slides. There's forming, when a group just comes together. There's storming, when conflict arises. Then there's this sort of norming status quo phase. There's performing with maximum efficiency and productivity, and it's a well-oiled machine at this point if you make it here. And then adjourning, and this stage would look like more reflection and transference at the end of a project. So you want to think about this really as a cycle. It might not be a linear cycle. We know commissions, people come and people go. So as new people join your group and others leave, these phases could jump around. Certain people in the group could be at a very different phase than other people in the groups, but acknowledging that when you start new somewhere with a group of people, you're gonna this cycle, the clock kind of turns on for this cycle. And the leadership in that group needs to cater to and reflect the style that the group is the phase, excuse me, that the group is experiencing. So let's look at leadership at the different phases of group development here. Now, in that forming time, there's a lot of politeness. People are still getting to know each other, get comfortable. Think people are excited. And drivers are really useful in giving the group initial direction and setting them on a path and kind of doing that immediate delegation. And when conflict shows up, well, then you're going to need more of a relationship master, because if you try to drive through conflict, things might get pushed down or swept on the rug for a little bit, but they're going to come back. And it's better to deal with those things as they're coming up, so things don't turn into larger issues, interpersonal conflicts. And as the stages go on, you need these different leadership styles, and the feelings and the behaviors of the group changes. So the best leaders adapting their style to match these stages. And what the table doesn't really show here is how do we move between the stages, because not all groups will get to that performing stage. But it's really about the groundwork that leaders can do in early forming stages that develop essential long-term success. So if you can cultivate this environment of creativity and productivity, open-mindedness, active listening, kind of back and forth, equal voice at the beginning, then it's really going to pay off big time once you get into maybe some more controversial issues, or it's time to perform and the public is waiting on a decision. So remember, these leadership styles and these phases, it's not all or nothing. You're going to have to blend styles, wear several different hats. This is just really just a guide and a way to put down on paper what's happening in a very sometimes non-linear way, but these things are occurring and we need to be aware of them. Okay, so one opportunity that we have to fine-tune our leadership skills in municipal government is being the chair on a commission. And being a good chair means being able to understand the group phases and making real connections with individuals and the whole group. So when it comes time to select a new chair, we do see people have their reservations sometimes. And this is understandable, because chairs do have added responsibilities, and they often act as, that contact person, maybe for the media, or the organizer for the next meeting, the minute taker, note taker, the spokesperson for the commission. So we get that it can feel like, okay, I don't think I have enough time or the capacity to be a chair. But you want to remember that it doesn't mean doing everything. Delegation as a chair is key, and focusing on those fundamental municipal processes, just about showing up on time and ending on time that we talked about, is sometimes all it takes to be a good chair, and then holding that bigger picture. So I'm going to show you a few steps here to kind of help guide a chair through the process, and hopefully it will maybe change how you feel about taking on a position like this, if it ever comes up offered to you. So as a chair, you need to understand why people volunteer. Okay, a good chair knows their commissioners and what motivates them as individuals, and the chair is able to meet those expectations and keep people engaged throughout the way. You also need to be able to set realistic expectations, or SMART goals, we call them. And the municipal process is slow, and it takes years sometimes to see real change. So you have to be able to understand that process and work within these longer term time frames. And then you need to be able to implement a work plan. So a clear work plan delegates tasks appropriately, and it contains checkpoints to measure success along the way. We have a nice article by the Vermont Institute for Government that we'll share in the chat with you, called Born to Chair. And it talks about running a meeting as a chair, dealing with conflicts, and it's not too long of a read, and it's informative. So definitely take a look at that if you have time. So let's go through these kind of 3 guiding principles to kind of help the chair wrap their heads around the duty here. What makes people want to volunteer? Well, they often want to make a difference, and they want to also know that their time and efforts aren't wasted, and they want to be part of something that's successful, and going somewhere, and they want to see these concrete, tangible results. And they're also there for social reasons. People want to make new relationships, build community. I moved to Montpelier and the same year ran for the Parks Commission because I wanted to get to know the community better, and I did it through that way. And it's been a great steep learning curve, but it's been a great way to become part of a community, even if you're new to it. Learn and be challenged. That's another reason that people decide they want to engage in the planning process, is to expand their own, leadership abilities or learn something new. And as a chair, you want to think creatively about the ways that you can meet these expectations of your other commissioners, and understanding their personal goals will go a long way. And also holding special events and getting out into the community can empower your commission and make the community also feel like you're planning along with them. So make sure that people do get to see some results and feel like they're part of the community in these processes and aren't just confined to those couple hours a month meeting. And it isn't just enough to understand why people volunteer, but you need to have a well-developed plan or smart goal in place, ready to go, that ensures some level of success that will help keep your group engaged. So we're going to talk about this idea of a SMART goal now. And this is a really good way to sort of reality check your ideas and your goals and make sure that the resources and the capacity needed are in place. So first off, a goal or a plan needs to be specific. It has to outline a problem statement that you have consensus on. You have to agree on what you're trying to solve and clearly write that out. It's got to be measurable. There needs to be checkpoints mapped out along the way so you can know where you're at. It's got to be actionable or achievable. Do these checkpoints that you've chosen, do they lead to the overall goal? Are you heading in the right direction with the actions you've laid out and the overall goal that you've labeled? Is it realistic? So is the capacity, is the funding, is the infrastructure, are those things a reality, or do some of those pieces need to be prioritized before going ahead with a larger goal? And then time bound is really important. Like I said, it's a slow process, municipal planning, and we need to keep things moving, and we can't lose sight of some longer term goals. So we have to kind of put a timestamp on things, at least to check back in with where we are at them. It doesn't have to be necessarily completion of a task all the time. And these can be multi-year plans or very specific short-term plans. So I'm going to share with you Tunbridge's 5-year strategic plan. And this was created with the help of the Community Wildlife Program, and it lays out a timeline for implementing some of their goals that are written in their town plan. Okay, and it is specific. Some of the projects are much more specific, but it's a long-term plan, so that's okay for this level of planning. It's measurable because they've worked in these project checkpoints. You can see they have the creation of Adopt a Patch program for invasive species, and then they're going to follow up with the landowners within the Adopt a Patch program. So that's a checkpoint along the way. It's actionable and achievable. So these projects build off of each other and they set the commission up for success. And this is the Conservation Commission we're talking about, but they've included the action of educating themselves on basic parameters of what is a wetland, so that they can then develop the list of suspected unidentified wetlands on a town resources map. So making sure that there's a general level of understanding behind the science is really key, and not just jumping into the assumption that everybody knows what a wetland is as you go and try to identify unidentified wetlands. And it's realistic because there's this mix of larger and smaller tasks. This is a 5-year plan. They've got it mapped out by each month. Maybe their summers are going to be really busy, but they have this plan in place to prepare in the winter for some of these bigger actions. So that's where the time bound factor comes in. And you can choose any one of these and take it and make a more short-term, detailed, smart goal. So we're going to do that now, and we'll use this Green Up Day event as the example. So I made a work plan. This is not a real work plan. This is just something I took from their actual strategic plan and broke down as a hypothetical. But it's specific here. We're getting more specific than just green up day. It's now trash cleanup, invasive removal with new plantings. We go another step further and we give some reasoning behind why we're doing this. Well, we want to engage the community and move forward with some education and ecological goals. It's measurable because we have these milestones and check-ins about finding partner businesses and selecting plantings and invasives, contacting the media. We have actions and tasks that are clearly identified here, finding project locations, plantings, volunteers, and it's realistic. You know, we have delegated to leaders, and they've expanded their own resources and capacity by partnering with the Tunbridge Town Forest Committee and the Tunbridge Walking Group. So you could go a step further and I take any one of these tasks and do the exact same thing and get more detailed. And you should when it's time to do those tasks. But the takeaway here is that being specific and clear about what you're doing and who's doing it is really important, not just for your commission, but for transparency for the public. Because if this is part of your 5-year strategic plan and you know, it's going towards a larger goal and you get to the end of that goal, people want to see, you know, what did you do to get here? How did we end up here? And this transparency, keeping these records is really essential and pays off in the long run. And if you can connect your work to things that are already happening in the town, goals that the town has, or a regional commission has, then you're going to have more support, more opportunities for partnership, likely more buy-in. Okay, so we're just about at a break here, and I want to wrap up my section with kind of the major theme of being a leader. And you know, it's rather than doing the work on your own, it really pays to understand the skills in your group, be able to do that delegation. And when you do it, you want to play to the strengths of your group and find new and exciting opportunities for your members who are looking to grow and gain new skills. You want to provide them with opportunities and make sure that you're not only delegating, but you're modeling your participation, and that you're having fun, that you're doing potlucks or events or something to celebrate your place and your resources. And you want to make sure that you are enjoying the places that you plan for and don't get too detached from you know, the place and the people that you're living in. So thank you for following me on that. And we've got a quick break here. Are there any questions in the chat that I can field now, Jens?
Thanks, Lincoln. Michael just has a comment that he was suggesting the first step in leadership is to have members complete training in Vermont open meeting law and the Public Records Act. Was hoping you could speak a little bit more to that piece of things, and I'll just put a link to the CC handbook in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Jens, for providing that handbook. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that's something that a lot of people learn on the fly, either, you know, by, you know, making a misstep or just kind of being silent at a whole bunch of meetings to get the handle on what's going on. So if you know, but if you can do that, and if there's a leader in your group that can sort of help to intake a newcomer and provide them with those resources, I think that will go a long way, not just to make that person feel comfortable, but to make sure that your commission is functioning and staying in that performing stage, even with brand new members coming on in their first meeting. So thank you for that comment. That is an excellent point.
Great, and that's all we've got in the chat. Eliza was just saying that she appreciated the Tunbridge example, and that she's also the Green Up Day coordinator. So
right
really
on.
appreciate that.
All right, well, you can take it and run with it. Awesome. That's so cool. Okay, Jens, I'm going to hand it over to you now.
Awesome. And hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Yep. Community values.
All right. Sorry, things are just a little bit weird at the moment. I'm sorry. I just need to stop. Well, no, I can keep going. All right. The first step here, I just want to move from thinking about individual leadership to, and Lincoln's just gone through this, the first section on individual leadership, understanding your leadership style and feeling comfortable enough with your style, and then learning other styles, and when is the appropriate time to switch between leadership styles. So we started with that first piece of individual leadership. Then we went to this next step of bringing that into the group, and how do you interact as a group, and what are the stages of group development, and what are the different types of leadership that are most appropriate in that in different stages of the group. And now I want to bring this understanding, excuse me, of leadership into working in the community, and what that looks like. Now, I'd say the first step here is, as we think about working in the community and bringing this leadership, is really understanding more about your community and where your community values are, and what's most important to the townspeople. I just want to remind everyone, conservation commissions, planning commissions, they're part of municipal government. You have to deliver for the people of your town. So understanding what the people in your town want and where those values are is really an important part of being able to be an effective leader in giving the people what they're looking for. So there are a lot of different strategies for understanding community values. A lot of towns will use surveys as a way of understanding more about what people care about. A technique we've used a lot in the community wildlife program is community value mapping, and actually taking that one step farther and saying, okay, what do you care about and where? And so it allows you to be a little bit more spatially explicit about those community values. Oh, townspeople want development here and that vibrant town center. Oh, they want conservation there to allow for recreation and the working landscape, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding community values, understanding where the town is at and what these values are, is a really important part, because it allows you to bring these natural resource issues in and demonstrate for the town how those natural resource issues dovetail with these community values. Again, making the case for why you're delivering what the town is looking for. The next important place, or the next important thing to understand as we're bringing this leadership into the community, is knowing your place. And Lincoln said, signing up for the Montpelier Parks Commission was a way that he started getting to know his place. And here I'm using place to talk about both the people and the landscape. And so working with a commission, conservation commission, planning commission, whatever it is, can be a great way to meet people in your town, to learn more about those community values. Also, it'll allow you to learn more about the places in town, those locations, what's where, what are those unique natural resources or landscapes or habitats, whatever it might be, and add some vibrancy to your understanding of the place you live and the work you're doing as a commission. So knowing more about place, I think, is a really important first step, both for you as an individual and for you as a commission. Right on the slide, you'll see a natural communities map. And this is for the four-town area of Bolton, Jericho, Richmond, and Huntington. And it was done by a natural resource consultant, Arrowwood Environmental, in 2012. And that document really helped the townspeople, commission members in those four towns understand what all was there. I mean, of course, they knew the basics before the inventory, They knew where the forests were, where the rivers were, but an inventory really allowed for to understand more of the details. Where are those most special ecological habitats that may not have a lot of, may not be really high profile? Um, these natural resource inventories are heavy lift for a town to pull off. They're often expensive, but in my opinion, they're really the most appropriate scale for town planning and is a great opportunity for celebrating place. I think this place is just such an incredibly important unifier that using it, understanding it, is a great way to move forward with commission work. At left, you can see, this is also from Bolton, Deb Shelby, the planning commissioner who helped the planning commission work on the town plan in Bolton, is showing a map that the townspeople had helped build, talking about different places in town and what was important to them as part of the town plan update. Now, I think celebration is a key part in all of this. As you're bringing your leadership into the town environment, celebrating your town is a key tenet of leadership. It's fun. When you have a celebration, it's fun. It makes people want to be a part of it. And that's true for participants as well as members of your commission. And it'll help you attract more participants. It'll help you attract more members. So the more you can celebrate your place, the easier it is to cut across groups with differing opinions. The easier it is to make things happen because there's this excitement in the air. So I had just mentioned this 4-town inventory that was part of the Science to Action project, Bolton, Richmond, Jericho, and Huntington. Well, at the same time that the consultant was engaged in the inventory, the steering committee for Science to Action had a whole walks and talks series, again, celebrating that place. And so at the top right, you can see a float down the Winooski River that we did as part of that project. There were a couple of naturalists also on board, and they would pull over and point to different ecological features as they floated down the Winooski, and really talk about natural and cultural history and make that place alive and celebrate it. There was a whole flotilla of boats. It was really an excellent experience for folks of all ages. Walks and Talks series. The town of New Haven had an armchair naturalist series. The Schuettsville Hill Wildlife Road Crossing on the Stowe-Waterbury town line, as part of their outreach, held an art contest, and the winners were featured in a local art gallery in Stowe. Food is always an important part of a celebration. Sharing a meal together, or even just a snack, but sharing food together is a key piece of celebration. Again, it's okay to have fun. In fact, it's better when you have fun. It makes people want to be a part of the commission that you're leading. Now, I'm talking about understanding more about your community and aspects of your community as you're bringing your leadership into that community. And I often use this pyramid to talk about what makes up a town. What are the pieces of a town that you want to consider? There's no one recipe. These are main ingredients, I think, and every town in Vermont has their own recipe for what the mix of these different ingredients. But this can be a helpful framework for understanding more about your community and where you can best apply your leadership. So at the top, you can see the built capital, the buildings, the infrastructure, the stuff that your town has, that gray infrastructure. And that's part of what makes your town. Buildings, community centers are all part of that infrastructure. Again, opportunities for you to lead, in terms of where you're going to host your events. The human and social capital is another ingredient in the recipe that makes up a town. And here I'm talking about skills, health, abilities, the social fabric of your town, the communication network, understanding more about how your town interacts, how you communicate, how you get along, what are the skills in your town or the skills in your commission, is another important, very important ingredient. And then at the bottom, we have the natural capital. And some of those are natural resources, reusable things, things like food, water, metals, wood, energy. Some of them are the intangibles, that beauty of nature or ecological services. But I'd say that that's the bottom of the pyramid, the one of those key ingredients. So this pyramid can be a way of thinking about your town and thinking what that recipe of your community looks like and what those elements are. Again, we're talking about fine-tuning your leadership as you bring it into the community context. We need to be clear, the more we talk about communication and participation and bringing your leadership into the community context, we need to be clear that we're talking about connecting with people, not just informing. Now, I don't read the legal section of the newspaper. I don't even get a paper newspaper. That is not the way to engage me in new things going on around town. Certainly, those hearings, notice of hearings are required and so forth. But we need to go beyond just informing people that you're having a meeting and creating vibrant events that help people connect to each other, help people connect to your issues, help people connect. And so that activity at Wright, Charette, that high school students led, that explored different options for where to build in the community, that's a much more exciting event than the notice that you see at left. I want to be at that event on the right and not at the event on the left. So think about that. Think about that as the work of your commission moves forward. Now, with all of this, we need to meet people where they are, not just a notice of the meeting and have people come to you, but meet people where they are. In Sharon, Vermont, they hosted a Dump and Donuts on Saturday mornings, a reliable opportunity to get people who are coming out to the transfer station, a great opportunity to meet people in a relaxed, carefree manner. The commission knew that's where folks gather and was able to set up a table and get information from the people about what they care about and what their values were. In Craftsbury, it's the general store at 5 o'clock in the morning as people are departing for work. A vibrant place to connect with people, to talk, and to explore those issues. So if you're thinking about advertising or trying to get people to your events, those are the opportunities to meet people. In Waitsfield, in the summer, the farmers market is hopping with people. And so for the Conservation Commission in Waitsfield that was looking to share some maps about forest blocks and habitat conditions, the farmers market was an excellent opportunity. They printed poster-sized maps. They distilled talking points for each of the maps, and they shared that information with visitors and townspeople alike. A really vibrant, awesome opportunity to reach people. So it's important that your commission, your leadership, be prepared to go to other people's meetings. And that's particularly true for other commissions. Understanding the relationship between the Conservation Commission and the Planning Commission is critically important for the effectiveness of the Conservation Commission and incredibly helpful for the Planning Commission. So having a CC member attend the Planning Commission meetings can be really helpful, again, for connecting. I want you to think of your work as being a leader at the town level, as facilitating change, as being a change maker. And that's a slightly higher bar than just keeping things going. But from my perspective, that's our job as being an environmental leader, is really being a change maker. Part of that is timing. And so you need to understand the timing for your commission. And here, I mean, what stage of group development are you at? Is your commission ready to take on a big project? Well, what about the town? Is the town ready for a big project? In Middlebury, when the two railroad bridges were being rebuilt, that was the talk of the town. That was a huge issue for Middlebury for many years, and the construction that came along with that was a very big deal. That was not a good time for the town to move forward on some other new initiative. Another part of being a change maker is managing conflict. And I want you to understand that conflict is an unavoidable part of getting a group together. It's inherent. When you have people with different ideas and different skills, conflict arises. And that's fine. That's to be expected. What we need to do is embrace that and be smooth in our facilitation of conflict and make sure that everyone feels heard and make sure that we can come up with a decision that works for everyone. And so that management of conflict becomes an important job, not just in your commission, but managing conflict across the town, so that you know that your issue is going to land well with the townspeople, and what you do to make sure it lands well, and how to handle those diversity of opinions that are sure to come out of whatever you've proposed. And lastly, as you think about yourself as a change maker, you need to understand that we're playing the long game here, and there are going to be successes and there are going to be failures at the individual level and at the commission level. And when you're playing the long game, you need to take that in stride and understand that that when you're doing it well, there are going to be incremental steps that are moving towards change. At the beginning of the webinar, Lincoln talked about making sure that commission members, people that you are leading, understand those incremental changes that have happened, understand the steps that you and your commission have taken to get to a bigger project or a bigger success. And so playing the long game is about celebrating those small successes as you go, and getting towards the big ticket item at the end. Okay, so that's the segment on working in the community. Lincoln, any questions for me at this time?
No questions. Alice Peel from Waitsfield had a right on cue point that their Planning Commission and Conservation Commission work together to write their town's natural resources chapter. So great example there.
Yeah, thanks, Alice. And that subcommittee of the Conservation and Planning Commission was really effective. And just a great example of what towns can do when there's good communication, when there's trust between the players on how you can get a really successful outcome. Thank you for that, Alice. All right. So now I want to just transition to this last segment. I just want to think a little bit more about collaborative conservation and how your work sits, your work at the local level sits in a broader context of conservation work at the state and national levels. So I want to talk about understanding what your Conservation Commission brings, about building partnerships and working at multiple scales. A little bit more than half the towns in Vermont have conservation commissions. And the local groups are a great place to find enthusiasm for a project, to better understand community values and a deeper understanding of a particular natural resource. So you need to know, if you're going to partner with other organizations, a statewide land trust, for example, you need to be clear on what your commission brings to that partnership. What's the role you're playing? Not just so you stay in your lane, but so that you can help deliver that to the partner. And so that everyone's clear on expectations and you can deliver that local enthusiasm, those local volunteers. When we think about building partnerships, you need to understand, well, why are we reaching out? What do we need from these other groups that might benefit both parties? What are we reaching out for? Who are we reaching out to? And when do we reach out? So understanding that context of, okay, where are we at in our project? What partners are we looking to bring in? And why and when? So that can be a really important part of this idea of collaborative conservation, of taking it and partnering with other groups, because frankly, no one can do it alone. The photo that you see on screen with the Governor Scott is from a project we were engaged in Wolcott. And in that picture is the Secretary of the Agency of Natural Resources, the Secretary of the Agency of Transportation, the Regional Planning Commission, several NGOs, the Nature Conservancy, and all of these towns partnered with the town of Wolcott. And so you can see that none of those groups could have done it alone. And they formed that partnership to get incredible things done. In all of this partnering, we're working at multiple scales. And so we want to understand these different scales that we're working at, that most local scale is critically important, because without the local work that you all are engaged in, that regional picture and that statewide picture don't look good. It's all dependent on that local action. And so understanding these multiple scales is really important. Here in Elmore, they did a zoning change, and that was a part of a much bigger project over the last 20 years along the Route 12 corridor. Lincoln's going to share with you an excellent story map, hot off the press, about this Route 12 project and how the local zoning was one piece, but then the Agency of Transportation is replacing structures. The Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department provided this excellent science. The NGOs, the Vermont Land Trust, the Northeast Wilderness Trust, have done incredible land protection work. And so we have different partners at different scales, all pushing towards a similar goal. So that's a great story map for you to check out. Lastly, I just want you to understand that your regional planning commissions are a great resource for you. They maintain a regional plan. They provide technical assistance. They're a data repository of local data. So as you're bringing your leadership into your commission and into the town level, make sure that you're partnering with the RPC, the Regional Planning Commission. All of this is a balancing act, and those natural resources are part of it, but that's adding to healthy economy and healthy community. Sorry, I've just got a couple more slides. I'm running a little bit late. I apologize for that, but just wanted you to see these. The Community Heart and Soul Field Guide is an excellent resource for learning more about a process of community engagement. Mapping Vermont's Natural Heritage is key towards understanding how to use the science in municipal planning, the science on BioFinder and Vermont Conservation Design. And Agency of Commerce and Community Development's planning manual spells out a lot of great participation and communication work. We're also offering environmental leadership trainings. They are full for spring of 23, but we'll offer them again in the fall. Many of the items, the content we've talked about today, we hit in much more detail in these environmental leadership trainings. Everyone can support conservation in Vermont through purchasing a habitat stamp or the donation to the Non-Game Wildlife Fund. And with that, I will bring this to a close. So thank you all so much for being with us today. Sorry I ran just a minute late, but I hope this was worthwhile to you. And I will stick around if you all have questions, but I understand if you need to go. No problem at all.
Thanks for joining us, everybody.
All right. Have a great day, folks. Thank you so much.